Labas rytas.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We have solved our technical issues. Now we can begin our discussion on challenges posed by the war to Lithuanian and Ukrainian industry. Let's look for solutions together. Let us remind some of our history. In early June this year, our committee went to Kiev and met with the Committee on Economics of the Verkhovna Rada, and we're very glad that the Committee on Economics of the Verkhovna Rada is together with us under the leadership of Roxolana. Hopefully we will have very effective discussions. So we began the meetings yesterday. We were in Trakai Castle. We met with the Karaim ethnicity that came to Lithuania during the times of Vytautas the Great. We also had a discussion on forestry reform, on hunting reform, during the working dinner. I will not take too much of your time, and now I would like to present the friends of our discussion. Mr. Paulius Saudargas, Deputy Speaker of the Seimas of the Republic of Lithuania, member of the Committee on Economics. Žygimantas Pavilionis is member of the Committee on Foreign Affairs and Deputy Chair of this committee, and also head of the Group for Interparliamentary Relations with Ukraine. Aistė Gedvilienė, Chair of the Committee on Environment, Protection. I will not name all the foreign guests. We don't have much time. You can see those names in the program. First of all, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Paulius Saudargas.
Brangus.
Dear friends from Ukraine, members of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine, chairs of committees, colleagues, welcome to the conference on the occasion of your visit. When the brutal war in Ukraine began, on the first days, we extended our wishes of resolution, and then we started extending wishes of victory. Today, as we see that you are regaining your territories, and on the front you are real victors, and the hope of your victory has increased. Therefore, we will put all our efforts to assist you and help you in this. We can see that Russia is falling into economic, military, and social disaster. The economic aspect of the war is another factor which we are going to discuss today, because on the one hand, Putin is waging a conventional war, and on the other hand is waging an economic and energy war, not only with Ukraine but with the entire Europe and the entire democratic world. Therefore, today we're going to share the solutions on Lithuania's efforts to withstand this winter. This winter is going to be very hard for us. We need to understand the difficulty of the situation we are in. Another task that we have faced is the reconstruction of Ukraine, and assistance and support from around the world in order to rebuild what has been destructed by the Russian army. We will not bring back the people, but we have to rebuild your country, and we can do this by our joint effort. And I'm very happy that today we're not going to speak about all these aspects in general, but also we're going to discuss some specific solutions offered by our experts from different spheres of how we can find common solutions, concerted efforts, and some cooperation possibilities, because in certain areas, specific areas, Lithuania is quite qualified. It has high expertise. Our light technology is on a very high level, and Lithuania has much to offer. So I believe that we can find some common points that are important for both of us. So I wish all of us effective conference, successful conference, and we also wish you victory, and Slava Ukraini. Thank you, Mr. Saudargas. Now I would like to give the floor to Roxolana Pidlasa. The floor is yours.
Okay. Now it's working. Sorry. Good morning. I will speak in English. I think it would be easier for translation and for everyone. It is a great pleasure to be here today, and I like to thank Kazis, first of all, for inviting us to your beautiful capital. I think that our joint assemblies is a great example of very productive interparliamentary cooperation, and I would like to continue them with the same intensity and with the same dedication from both sides. Since our first meeting in Kiev, a lot has changed, and changed for the better. Today, the whole Western, and not only Western world, watches in awe Ukraine's victorious counter-offensive on the east. I receive dozens of messages from people all around the world with the words of admiration and support for Ukrainian soldiers. And this would never be possible without support of our friends, first and foremost without the support of Lithuanian people. Lithuania was one of those countries who actually listened when Ukraine's president pleaded for military aid before 24th of February. I believe that the first stingers came to Ukraine from Lithuania, and we will always remember this. But we shall not rest on our laurels. The war goes on. Yesterday, Russia targeted their missiles at electrical substations and combined heat and power plants on the east of Ukraine. Unfortunately, the missiles reached the targets, leaving tens of thousands of people without electricity. Kharkiv and Donetsk oblasts experienced a complete blackout for the evening. Zaporizhzhia, Sumy, and Dnipro regions had partial blackouts. Apart from disrupting people's lives, it obviously dramatically affects the economy. By the beginning of September, total infrastructural damages in Ukraine are estimated at $114 billion US. From the beginning of the war, 412 businesses were damaged or completely destroyed because of the war. Damage inflicted on the industry is estimated at $9.7 billion US. Kyiv School of Economics made calculations that show that repairing costs for all the damaged infrastructure will amount to $197 billion US, and this sum is not final. That's a lot of money for the country like Ukraine and for the country that has 47% of its budget coming from international aid at the moment. The reality was fiscal situation is quite harsh because a state budget with monthly deficit of $3 billion basically is able to finance only military needs, pensions, and salaries for state functions, such as salaries for teachers, doctors, and public service. We actively seek funds for rebuilding on all the platforms, including interparliamentary platforms. At the same time, the Ministry of Economic Development of Ukraine, our fellow government counterpart, has developed a scope of infrastructural projects that could be offered to potential investors and those wishing to invest into the rebuilding. There is a possibility also for associations present today to come in direct contact with the Deputy Minister of Economy of Ukraine and receive an outlook of specific projects for your industry that are ready for investments right now. I will be personally glad to assist this communication with anyone who is interested and willing to proceed right away. Here we're talking about investment projects in power industry, agro-industrial complex, defense industry, furniture and woodworking industries, industrial manufacturing, logistics and infrastructure, and many others. It may seem like it's not the right time to invest at the moment, but as Ukraine's president said that Ukraine is the greatest opportunity for investment since the World War II has finished. Also, I think it is important to mention in relations to our cooperation with Lithuania that Ukrainian Forbes magazine assessed how countries' financial assistance to Ukraine during the war compared to their GDPs, which in my opinion is the most fair way to assess or discuss such matters. The help that Lithuania provided in 8 months amounts to 0.55% of your country's GDP. And that's twice more than the percentage that Germany or Denmark or the Netherlands offered. We certainly appreciate any help that is provided to Ukraine, but I wished to emphasize today that Ukrainians know who are our true friends, and your support matters to us greatly. And I would like to finish my speech with a little story about something that I brought from Ukraine. I believe it's somewhere here. You know, when the town of Borodyanka was liberated, when Russians were kicked out of there, dozens of reporters and photographers came to see what is the aftermath of the Russians present. And they saw many buildings that were bombed during Russian occupation and during the fighting. They looked, Kazis and many members of the economic committee from the Lithuanian parliament were in Borodyanka, and they saw these apartment buildings that looked like open wounds. And one of the apartments, it was completely destroyed. There was only one wall left, only one kitchen cupboard left. And there was this piece of ceramics, a ceramic bird that was left, that survived, that miraculously survived after bombing. And it became a symbol of Ukraine's resistance, a symbol that shows that Ukraine will survive and the people of Ukraine will survive. And today, I brought a copy of this bird, and I would like to present it to Lithuanian Parliament and to Vice Speaker of the Lithuanian Parliament as a symbol of our friendship. Thank you for hosting us.
Thank you.
Ačiū, Roxolana, iš tikrųjų. Thank you very much to Ms. Roxolana Pidlasa. Indeed, we all watched the events in the UK, and the former Prime Minister, Mr. Johnson, spoke on this morning of freedom. So thank you very much. We also have Ambassador of Ukraine with us, so I will give the floor to him for introductory remarks. The floor is yours.
I'm really very glad that we have this important meeting. We have worked a lot during the last months, concentrated our efforts on finding out what's happening in Ukraine, and I would like to thank the Lithuanian friends that were always there, that have visited Ukraine from the first day of aggression. All ministers, Prime Minister, Speaker, Parliament, they all were ahead of the curve and provided an all-out support to Ukraine. Economy is our also very critical front of our fight against Russian aggression, because we need to, first of all, to provide the necessary resources for our army in this difficult time. So our first objective is to recover the economical processes in Ukraine and provide necessary resources for the budget and for the army. And of course, we are working a lot on a short-term reconstruction of Ukraine. We have met a lot of Lithuanian people, and a lot of Lithuanians came to Ukraine to see what's happening, and we really appreciate very much the very swift decisions by the government of Lithuania, providing 10 million euros for the short-term reconstruction, and also making a decision on the 4 important projects which will be immediately implemented. They are very critical and very important because the winter is coming. A lot of people need to find place to return to Ukraine, and of course we are thinking in terms of recovering the whole economic situation, economic processes in Ukraine. We need to build houses, we need to build kindergartens, schools, hospitals, all elements of infrastructure, so that people get back from either from the Western Ukraine, or they come from Europe or from Lithuania, and they start their normal life in Ukraine. So thank you very much for your very active position. We receive all kinds of support on your side. Let's implement this important 4 projects, and let's not forget about the long-term objectives, long-term reconstruction of Ukraine. Before the war, Ukraine and Lithuania had a very productive economic cooperation. It achieved the unprecedented levels before the war, and I believe that Lithuania has a necessary resources and ambition to find a bigger place, bigger niche in Ukrainian economy after the war, because of course it will not be only the reconstruction of what was before the war. It is based on the new principles of long-term transformation, which is based on European integration criteria, and I believe that Lithuania can find its right place in investing in Ukraine, in building new industries in Ukraine, and finding its profits in Ukraine. So I would like to wish you all the success, and let's move on. Thank you.
Ačiū. Thank you very much.
Allow me to remind you the fact that you are welcome to speak in 3 languages, in Lithuanian, English, and Ukrainian. The interpretation is provided into and from these languages. I'm the person who likes improvising. We have also a representative from the construction sector with us. Her name is Aiste, so the floor is yours. Good morning. Thank you for the floor. It is a great pleasure to see such a large delegation of people from Ukraine, also representatives from the government authorities and political authorities. I think that today in our discussions we will find the ways not only to help Ukraine win the war, but also restore the country. We have been looking for ways to do that, and the work is going on already. As far as I know, the minister has been visiting Ukraine. We have also discussed different ways of reconstructing Ukraine. We also talked about the position of attaché in Ukraine. Ukraine is following the lead of Lithuania, and it is translating the laws of Lithuania in the areas of forestry. Construction sector is on the rise in Ukraine because people have to come home. They need the infrastructure. Therefore, I hope that the excellent construction sector of Lithuania, we are very proud of it, will have things to offer. And I hope that we will have all the opportunities, all the possibilities in terms of legal regulation for our business to help your country. I hope we will find excellent proposals and ways to help Ukraine. Thank you very much. I have also mentioned the fact that we have a chair of the Interparliamentary Assembly of Lithuania and Ukraine with us, and I have in mind Mr. Paviljonis. Could you please say a few words about your work? And later on I will give the floor to the representatives of our opposition. But let me remind you that in the Parliament of Lithuania there is no opposition as far as the matters of Ukraine go. So this is what I wanted to stress.
Well, I would say I agree with Chairman. There is no position in opposition in Lithuania and Ukraine. Every committee of this Parliament is working for Ukraine. That's our main mission. Yes, we recently renewed Bilateral Assembly. We hope it will meet in Kiev soon. Trilateral Assembly will meet in Vilnius by the end of November with Polish friends. But we will use all other instruments as well. During the summer and your wartime, we created this United for Ukraine parliamentary platform that is, I think, the biggest lobby organization for Ukraine in the world. I don't know simply bigger. I know in China that is twice smaller than this. But also we shouldn't forget EU and NATO. Today, I gladly checked news from Stockholm where center-right coalition seems to be in construction. Let's remember that it was Carl Bildt team who brought us to EU, who pushed for accession talks with Ukraine, and I think this is our mission for next year, to open accession talks for Ukraine to the European Union. That will not be easy, but it is our fight this year to do it for you, as well as NATO. Vilnius summit in Vilnius will be next year. Maybe it might sound romantic or radical, but you know, I think in Lithuania we believe in good miracles, and we believe in justice. that needs to be brought to this region after big failures and mistake in Bucharest NATO summit. So let's fight for those two memberships. And of course, Lithuania, though it's small, but you know that our heart is very big to make it happen for you. So thank you, and I will learn from this session as much as I can to bring it into this bilateral assembly that we will convene in Kiev, I hope, till the end of October.
Thank you, Žygis. Dabar suteikiu žodį.
And now the floor goes to Mr. Algirdas Sysas. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to the members of parliament from Ukraine. Good morning to our business representatives. I keep saying that these conferences are the venues for taking decisions. However, we still need to engage in actual work. We have the democracy is flourishing in Lithuania. Therefore, it is not surprising that I, representing the opposition in the Parliament of Lithuania, am also given the floor. Me and Mr. Paviljonis, we went to Ukraine, and I saw the situation in Borodenka, in Irpin, and other places. It is enough to see it once in order to understand what has been done, what damage has been done, and how many resources, human resources as well, will be needed for restoring the country. And now, nobody's abusing the time. We still have time, and we are going to focus on the matters of the conference. It has been rightly said that not everything is being decided on the front. We have a lot of perished Ukrainian on the front. Therefore, I would like to invite you for a minute of silence to honor those who lost their lives.
Дякую.
Thank you. And now I suggest that we move on to the main part of our discussions. And I would like to give the floor to Ms. Daiva Garbaliauskaitė Mikalauskienė. She's Vice Minister of Energy, and her presentation is on energy matters. We kept saying that energy is a key to freedom. And this has been proven lately. People die in Ukraine. Putin has its agenda, and he wants the countries to experience the energy darkness. Well, we will see whether he will succeed. Good morning. My name is Daiva Garbaliauskaitė, and I am going to focus on energy matters today. As it has been rightly noted, when Russia started a war against Ukraine, and when Russia started energy war against Europe and all of us, we have understood that energy independence is the backbone for independence at large in general. Lithuania, in the last decade, has made important steps for Lithuania to feel more confident in terms of energy independence. However, certain things haven't been completed yet. we do have an LNG terminal in Klaipėda that allows us to have sufficient amount of gas. We also have energy links to Sweden and Poland that allow us to ensure the import of electricity from European countries. Some 10 years ago, we were the country exporting electricity. However, with the Ignalina nuclear power plant being closed, we haven't ensured sufficient generation of electricity for our country. Therefore, I would like to focus on this aspect in my presentation, and I would like to speak about the steps being taken in order to have a sufficient amount of electricity in Lithuania. The electricity consumption, the electricity in Lithuania is consumed and from the energy that is imported. And 65% of electricity consumed was the imported electricity. The remaining part of electricity is being produced in Lithuania. And I'm happy to say that 64% of energy produced in Lithuania is the green energy that is produced from the renewable resources. We have plans up to 2030, and our aim is to have the entire amount of electricity needed to be produced in Lithuania and from the renewable resources. We hope to produce more than 7 gigawatts of energy in order to produce this 100% of electricity needed in Lithuania. And after 2030, we hope to become a country that exports electricity. Therefore, we have the plan up to 2030. We also have the 2 wind energy parks that should produce 1.4 gigawatts of energy, and also 2 gigawatts of solar energy. For that to become a reality, we need a few conditions. That is, regulatory changes for the renewable energy to be developed faster, simpler, with shorter deadlines. We also focus on European projects in order to promote the development of the production of electricity. Last year, the record amount of energy was used, that is 12 terawatt hours. And this number is on the rise, and it will be rising in the future. This is how the curve looks like. It reflects the goals presented by me. This means that we will produce the major amount of energy from renewable sources, from wind and solar energy. And this energy will be needed to meet the local demands. The regulatory changes that I have touched upon, they were prepared in spring in the Parliament of Lithuania. We had a few important packages. One of them included wind energy, that is sea wind energy package. I will focus on it later on in my presentation. And we had another package called the Breakthrough Package, allowing to produce energy with simplified regulations. We are focusing on wind and solar energy, and also the favorable conditions for those who produce energy. This is how the present situation looks like. This is the installed generation capacity in Lithuania, which is 700 megawatts of wind energy, and more facilities are under construction. And I have in mind the solar energy and also the permissions for further development. These projects will be implemented during the following years. High prices and the war has had an impact on the developers of renewable energy sources. Now we have the applications to develop the wind energy for 2 gigawatts and twice as more applicants for the development of solar energy. The interest is high. I hope that in the coming years there will be more breakthrough in the development of renewable energy. The consumers and producers allow the users who use the energy and produce it at the same time to adapt easier to the situation. They can also produce solar energy or connect to the remote solar park. And people who live in the block of flats, they can purchase a part in the remote solar energy, and this is how they can contribute to reducing their energy bills. More than 100 million euros were dedicated for that this year, for people to acquire solar energy, solar power plants. These projects are very popular. Lithuanian residents understand that it is very important because it is a green energy and it is a real way of becoming independent in terms of energy consumption, and it is also the way to reduce the energy bills. We also have we are developing another large energy project, and this is offshore wind park. And we will start constructing it next year. Now we are doing the sea bottom research, and we are working on other parameters in order to prepare for the competitive procedure that will take place next year. And this year we are looking for the government to provide the information regarding the construction of the second offshore wind park. These projects are very important for our energy independence because the 2 wind energy parks could be constructed before 2027. And that would allow Lithuania to produce 1.4 gigawatts of energy. That will be very important in aiming for complete independence in terms of electricity. As for the future, we see energy as the backbone of Lithuania's independence. In the future, we want to produce more energy from renewable resources. The electromobility system is also being developed. We are investing into the development of electric cars. Before 2030, we hope to have 60,000 private and public charging stations in Lithuania. That would allow the transition from polluting transport towards environmentally friendly transport. In terms of investment, the investment is directed towards businesses, residents, and public sector. Before 2030, we plan to invest over 1 billion euros for subsidizing and promoting businesses and residents to have the transition from polluting resources to environmentally friendly resources. We're going to invest into offshore wind farms, solar farms, into changing polluting boilers. Our aim is for the investment to reach the people. This and the next year, we plan to invest between 6 and 8 million euros in these projects. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present these ideas, and I hope you will have questions and we will be able to engage into the discussion.
Thank you, Daiva. Now we will first discuss energy block and have a discussion. Then we will head to the second block, followed by the discussion, and finally the third block. Thank you, Daiva. I would like to give the floor to Renatas Pocius, Chair of the National Energy Regulatory Council. Could you introduce your institution and its activities? I think that this institution is facing very many difficulties because currently we are liberalizing the power market in Lithuania, which has coincided with the Putin's war in Ukraine. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Your Excellency Ambassador, Deputy Speaker of the Seimas, members of the Seimas, dear friends from Ukraine. Actually, we are Energy Regulatory Council, and I believe that Ukrainians do have the same institution because we cooperate with them, and we have run a number of joint projects with them. Speaking strategically and in terms of cooperation of all the regulatory agencies in the European Union, all the institutions, well, we can see that Ukrainian energy system is synchronized with the European energy system, and this is a great achievement. The Baltic region supported this process in order to connect the Ukrainian energy system to the European system. But we are facing the second stage, not only in technical terms, but also commercial terms, so that energy trading could take place. We are sharing our know-how, our expertise with our colleagues in Ukraine and their regulatory agency. And luckily, in the near future, Ukraine will join the common trading zone in the European Union for the power trading. These are very important tasks. We have to support each other on that. Today I would like to briefly present and speak about energy prices and several proposals for European regulators on mitigating the prices in the medium and long term. In this chart, you can see the result of energy prices resulting from the Russian manipulation and today we are also in an energy war, which has already been mentioned. The manipulations started in summer 2021. As you can see, before the end of 2021, we saw the first surge of energy prices. It was the result, you can see that on the left side, the storage facilities led by Gazprom in April 2021, they were not fulfilled in order to in 2021 Gazprom storage facilities were not fulfilled, and when we had the post-pandemic period in 2021, when we had the restoration of the market and we had the demand for natural gas, and there was a lack of natural gas in the storage facilities, and all the conservative contracts signed before led to the second surge of energy prices in 2022. Up to now, we are facing the same situation as a result of different manipulations from Russia. At the end of February 2022 and then the beginning of March, the market reacted to the war. Later on, the market eased, but in order to maintain high energy prices, Russia took various steps, which was the closing down of Nord Stream 1 and many other actions. And in August this year, we had a price shock. And this was the result of the stopping of the Nord Stream gas supplies. The European Union prepared beforehand in order to fill gas storage facilities and ensuring necessary supplies for the winter. Despite the fact of closing the Nord Stream for a long period, we are not experiencing any difficulties because the level of filling those storage facilities is much larger than was in the previous periods. Today, we can see certain aspects of economic recession, which then results in the decrease in demand for gas. On the right-hand side, you can see the chart which represents all the European Union member states that are filling up their gas storage facilities, and this level of filling upper of the facilities is quite high, so it shows that Europe is quite serious about preparing for the winter period. Now, let me say a few words about the import structure change compared to 2021. So as you can see, the routes, Yamal gas pipeline and others, we saw the decrease of use of those gas pipelines up to 20%. Europe has replaced its gas supplies with Norwegian gas. It is noteworthy that Europe is facing temporary difficulties, but Lithuania's example, in 2010, Gazprom tried to blackmail Lithuania and Lithuania had to pay the highest gas prices. Therefore, it prompted us to think of alternatives, to find alternatives. Now we have the LNG terminal, which is a guarantor for us. Certainly, we are facing certain difficulties, but in the long term, we can see the transformation of the import structure. When natural gas will be imported through terminals from Algeria, Norway, and other countries. Speaking about the import structure, on the right-hand side, you can see the dark blue color representing 2022. This is import from Russia through Kotlovka. In 2022, since May, Lithuania took the decision to ban any imports of gas and oil to the territory of Lithuania from the Russian Federation. So you can see, since this period, Lithuania stopped the imports of any energy resources from Russia. So this is a huge improvement, and Lithuania was the first in the EU to announce this. So we had effective preparations for that. Had effective preparations for that. We have the Gipol link with Poland, which is represented by the dark red color. And we are this means that we are transporting gas to Poland. We have 4 countries, practically 5 countries, the Baltic countries, Finland and Poland, and our terminal is insufficient. And Finland is planning to construct the second terminal by the end of this year, which will improve the energy imports. Speaking about electricity prices, it is not only Lithuania but the entire Europe that is facing the problem of electricity prices increase. When the prices of natural gas is increasing, and this results in the increase in electricity prices in the entire Europe, with the exceptions of Nordic countries, where the largest share of energy is produced from hydropower. and therefore in the Nordic countries the negative effects are smaller, but the negative effects on the natural gas market is translated into the electricity market. And we can see the tenfold increase in electricity prices on the market, and this has a great impact on business and consumers, and certainly certain measures have to be taken in order to mitigate or manage this unprecedented soaring of electricity prices. European regulators made certain proposals. Some are short-term and some are medium and long-term solutions. We have 3 pillars. So first of all, the promotion of market integration. We're working with Ukrainian colleagues in order to better integrate Ukrainian energy market into the European market. We have fragmented markets in the EU. We can see that today, in which reduces the attraction of products, the liquidity of the market. Our aim is to have the integrated market, to have one zone which would finally have the positive effects on energy prices. The second pillar is the enabling of bilateral contracts. In order to develop energy parks, long-term bilateral contracts are needed. And this is a guarantee for the contractors. So the implementation of power purchase agreements is very important. Even if the electricity prices are high on the market, it does not mean that electricity prices will be high for the end users. So this is the way of managing those prices, managing the increase of prices. We are also implementing financial instruments because our market is quite isolated now. And we're working with operators in order to create formal transmission rights and enable their trading as financial products. And those that are trading in the wholesale market can reduce their risks. Another important element which should be important for the business is flexibility of the markets and flexibility of services that are oriented to the management of demand and supply, and it enables business to save certain amounts of money. Certainly, we have independent suppliers. We have 3 entities that are engaged in that. They are also planning to present their activities in order to they will show the measures that they are planning to manage the supply and demand. This is a measure that might seem to be unimportant, but it is quite important, quite significant, because it is aimed at reducing bureaucratic barriers, ensuring generation and infrastructure. Another package, or the third pillar, is oriented at the end user, which is energy efficiency. The European Union has planned for energy efficiency measures to be implemented. And we know that if the demand is decreasing, the prices also can decrease. Therefore, we need to be efficient in our energy use, because this is a very important factor. Another aspect that I would like to touch upon, without going further into detail, is the protection of consumers. Without the final intervention and support by the government, it would be very difficult to survive. In Lithuania, we have this scheme where domestic consumers can get compensations for the high energy prices. And without such a compensation, the soaring prices would be drastic. Therefore, support mechanisms are necessary. The European Union actually has different practices of support or to mitigate price increases. Some countries employ such measures as different compensations in lump sums or other support schemes. There's a great variety of them in the European Union, and in the nearest period, Lithuanian government will take the decision on the compensation of certain tariffs. Security measures are also very important, and in Lithuania, we have adopted the security aspects when, for example, natural gas is imported during the period when the prices are low, and they are being stored in the storage facilities and then used when the prices are high on the market. So this brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you very much to all the speakers on energy matters. Before moving on to the discussion, I would like to give the floor to a person who takes an esteemed position, and this is Mr. Kasčiūnas, who is well known in Lithuania as the initiator of constructing the barrier between Lithuania and Belarus. So we have kind of Kasčiūnas wall, just like Trump's wall in the United States. Mr. Kasčiūnas. He's the chair of the National Committee on National Security. The floor is yours. Thank you very much. Thank you for all this initiative. I welcome all the guests. Beyond doubt, all practical matters related to our defense will be discussed by the colleagues. We are focusing a lot in our committee on defense, on these matters, on looking for the common things between the defense area, and we have joint plans in terms of drones. This is a very important thing. And sometimes drones may serve as the type of aviation. It is very important to have the anti-tank, anti-air missile equipment. If you have them, you are powerful, and we have a huge potential in that area in Lithuania. We had drone days in Lithuania. Therefore, I think that we may have new opportunities in working together with Ukraine. We also produce optical equipment and thermal equipment. It is needed for Ukraine in fights that take place in the cities. Anti-drone equipment is also very important. Lithuania is focusing on that and developing its capacities. These three segments of our industry is very important, but I hope that the professionals who are involved in these areas will speak more about this. We are cooperating a lot with the Embassy of Ukraine and the Ambassador of Ukraine to Lithuania. I also speak about these matters whenever I go abroad in all bilateral and multilateral meetings. We are very happy that Ukraine has achieved breakthrough in the war and regained part of its territory. We all understand that this war may be a long-waging war that may involve certain fatigue. The economic matters and other aspects may be used for dividing the European society. This is the fact. Having in mind the long time war, the Western countries may force Kiev to enter into negotiations that may not be absolutely in favor of Ukraine, and our leaders are saying that this will not happen, and this is very important. However, there's an area of work for us. We have an idea which was welcomed, and it is related to our defense budgets and separate lines in our defense budgets for the support for Ukraine. This would send a clear message to Ukraine and to our people that we are ready to support this war and that our support will not change. If we had such a budget line in Lithuania, we could promote the work with our defense industry. This is the idea I have, and I keep communicating it wherever I go, and I hope that it will materialize in the future. As you know, our support for Ukraine is unwavering, and we will do everything we can for Putin's plans not to be implemented, and no matter how long the war takes, we will support you until the victory. Thank you very much to the chair of the Committee on National Defense. And now let's go back to our discussion and
your government for your courage in cutting off the Russian gas imports. It was a very bold move, and especially when you're doing it the first country in Europe. You know that we discussed and we asked the European Union to include the Russian gas embargo in the 6th sanctions package and in the 7th package. But unfortunately, it did not happen. That is why today, if I may ask your opinion on what we could, what arguments we could offer to the European countries, what best practices, some of them were in your presentations, what best practices we could appeal to in the Lithuanian case to persuade the European Union to finally impose the embargo. And well, I'm asking you because you spoke with your colleagues from, your counterparts from ministries of energy in different countries, and you may help us to understand maybe the nuances of their concerns.
Thank you. Ačiū, dėkui. Prašau.
Ja, tai aš gal dėkoju už klausimą. Visų pirma, gal aš pradėsiu.
Thank you for the question, and I will start speaking from the different aspect. In Lithuania, the discussions are taking place, and the main argument why it is difficult to rid of Russian gas is that other countries, other European countries, were too dependent on Russian gas. And for them, it is quite difficult in practical terms to switch from one source of energy to another. Lithuania has been well prepared because it already had invested previously in this. We had our LNG terminal. Other countries, especially Germany, and Germany is one of the most dependent countries on Russian gas. They do not have these conditions. However, the trends are positive, and Germany is constructing a few terminals. One is already completed. Earlier we talked about the closure of nuclear power plants. However, now we see the increased need in energy, and in order to reduce the import of energy from Russia, we considered it. Well, unfortunately, there is no way of switching from one source of energy to another rapidly. We need time. I would like to add something to what you have said. Now, a lot of discussions are going on among businesses. Putin has lost in this area. He's too late. There were a lot of threats of switching off gas. If he hadn't threatened us, he would have won, probably. But now we reacted to the previous threats, and Putin is being defeated in that area. Alexandra, the floor is yours.
Ukrainian language, okay. Перш за все, дякую і Дайві, і Ренатусу за цікаву і ґрунтовну таку презентацію.
Thank you very much for your presentations. And thank you to Ms. Garbaliauskaitė. You have talked about the possibilities for the private people to invest into energy and then use the energy. My question is, how are you going to do that? And I would like to ask about the energy price in Lithuania. Is there a difference between the price for private people and for businesses? And what does the energy price depend on? Thank you.
Ačiū už klausimą.
Thank you for this question. As far as I understood, the question is how can people benefit from this? If a person lives in a private house, then this person may construct this solar power plant on the roof of the house. And this person would not be buying the energy from the network, because this owner of the house will produce the electricity on his or her roof and then use it. And this household will not use the energy from the network and will not cause the overload of the network. And this household will be able to use the electricity cheaper, because this household will also be the producer of energy. Thank you very much.
Про громадян, які можуть встановити сонячні панелі.
My question is related to did you have in mind people who can construct solar panels on their house? Yes, indeed. I talked about the people who live in private houses. However, people who live in the block of flats, they also have certain opportunities. They may acquire part of the solar energy from the solar energy park that may be built in the outskirts of the city. And the support is provided for this as well, because the majority of Lithuanian residents live in blocks of flats, not in the private houses. Now, with the energy prices going up and with the energy poverty increasing, the government is aiming to address the situation not only by providing the compensation, but also by providing the opportunities to invest into energy, to contribute to the production of energy, and in order to have this transition to the private energy source. And we are talking about each household and the possibility for it to contribute to energy independence. I would like to add to what has already been said. Speaking of the most modern systems, the remote systems, it is based on metering principle. There's a remote power plant, and then a person may acquire a certain part of this power plant, for example, 5 kilowatts, and then it is being calculated how much this power plant produces, and there are 2 different counters in the household. And during the 2-year period, there should be a balance. You consume as much as you produce. And the supplier uses the market price or the price set by the regulator and compensates the owner, to the household that owns this part of the power plant. Now the price is 32 euros for kilowatt. It costs about 1,000 euros for kilowatt, and part of the construction of this power plant is being compensated. The remote power plant is more expensive, and 323 euros. This is the amount of the reimbursement. At the moment, we have a certain tariff for the energy consumers and those users that use more than 1,000 kilowatts per year. The price is not regulated by the government. There are fixed contracts, and certain users pay 17 cents for kilowatt. For example, if they fix the price for 2 or 5 years, they already experience the benefit. Certain consumers pay 24 euro cents for kilowatt. The price in the energy exchange is very high. The regulator has set the price for energy 33 € for a kilowatt. And the government is prepared to compensate, to provide the reimbursement of 9 cents per kilowatt. And as far as gas goes, the consumers are divided into those who use gas for heating their houses. They pay 77 € per cubic meter with compensation, and the price without compensation would be high, about 2 € per cubic meter. Indeed, we may be able to discuss these matters during the break. And now we have to move on to the second block of our discussion. And I have in mind short and long-term plans for Lithuania's assistance to the reconstruction of Ukraine. As far as you remember, in June we were in Ukraine and the construction representatives were with us, and we talked about what can be done. And ISTE has mentioned that we have the Construction Sector Development Agency, and we will give the floor to the director of this agency, Mr. The floor is yours.
While it is very difficult to be brief, well, the previous speakers had a different point of view. I will speak on energy efficiency more, why it is necessary, because both the principle in Europe is to have energy efficiency and the production from renewables, and this is the guide. This should be the guiding principle for the reconstruction of Ukraine. We have taken a decision on 4 buildings, and 10 million euro has been earmarked. Then Vilnius city will give 500,000, and we will collect all the money. And this is the 36-family residential complex in Borodenka. When we went there and we saw that there's a large number of families that have no houses, no accommodation, and I believe that our project would contribute to the solution of the problem. This means that these are not only accommodations for people with kitchens and bathrooms, but we are planning the diesel generator for ensuring uninterrupted electricity flows. We're also thinking of the recuperators in order to have fresh air for the residents and at the same time save energy. Public buildings in Borodenka are nearly all demolished, and starting with the municipality and police are all housed in the school. And all the government has not proposed the reconstruction of the building, but asked the school. The school is the only building left there. Until the 1st of September next year, Lyceum number 3 would be reconstructed. It is partially demolished. We will also take care of energy efficiency and change teaching spaces, more close to the European standards. In European, we saw the situation when there were attempts to damage all the buildings by the Russian army when they invaded. But when you live your life constructing, and it is very sad to see the other side of the story when there's only the attempt to destroy something. And also another object is the reconstruction of the bridge. We met with the Minister of Infrastructure, and this is one of our, well, these are the decisions that have been taken, and the works are underway. Everything is based on the financing, because this is a unitary assistance. Lithuania did not have such a precedent in the past. In terms of long-term perspective, and the main principle of helping Ukraine not only to reconstruct the buildings to their previous situation. I can not speak on behalf of the government, but our Ministry of Environment has made several proposals. For example, in Lugan, our project was considered to be the fundamental project, and it will be implemented with certain changes. Our idea is that, well, Lithuania is a small country, so we can take a small urban unit up to 50,000 residents to plan this residential unit and then implement it. In 2 weeks' time, I will be meeting two members of the project, Kurk Lietuvai, Create for Lithuania, and one of them is a Ukrainian. She's a lawyer and she's an expert in energy efficiency. The Lithuanian member is the expert of spatial planning. And we want to help the planning of the necessary infrastructure in one small town. If we have a proper planning on the basic level, this helps to save energy by 30%. As I've already mentioned, we should not only speak about spatial planning, and also we should think about construction management. We also had the idea of training at least 30 Ukrainian citizens from the area, so that our solution is not the only one, in order to ensure the multiplication of similar projects. We know the situation in the east and in the south, and the level of destruction will be even greater there, because it took the war was long-term there. Well, everything depends on the funding. We have established a cooperation development fund under our government. This will be the basic funding mechanism. If Lithuania allocates certain technical assistance, the fund could attract donors from around the world and including private and institutionals. Dalius had an idea. It can be implemented if at least every municipality constructed an apartment for a counterpart municipality. This would not be very costly for an individual municipality, but for the residents of Ukraine, this gift would be a great assistance. I hope that we will have many more plans to be implemented, and all our efforts are targeted at you because Ukraine is fighting for us too. Thank you. Thank you. You know Dalius Gedvilas very well. He went to Ukraine with the committee in June. And we have to actually take practical steps instead of talking only. Dalius, the floor is yours. Could you present your further activities and plans in Ukraine?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Representatives of the Rada of Ukraine, members of the Lithuanian Parliament, ladies and gentlemen. It's not the first time that I intervene on this subject, and I want to focus on more specific matters. After a few meetings, we managed to convince our authorities that a separate agency is needed, and it has been set up, and a very professional director was appointed. I have a few slides. I would like to draw your attention to 5 points. First and foremost, a lot of buildings were destroyed. The engineering work has to be performed in the destroyed cities and towns. It's not the first time that I speak on the subject. The entire infrastructure of the construction industry has to be digitalized for Ukraine to be able to become part of the European Union context of the construction sector. We have talked to the representatives of the Ukrainian Construction Association, and illegal work has to be eliminated from the sector, and I think that we can contribute to this. Public procurement is very important. This has to be addressed rapidly and effectively. And the main matter that has to be addressed on the European Union level, and I think that Lithuania has to contribute to this, this is insurance of workers and insurance of property. And now allow me to stop at each point here. I have a few photographs that you can see in my slides, and these photos were made during my visit in Ukraine. I was there with Mr. Starkevičius. these photographs were made in Ukraine. When engaging in reconstruction work, the research has to be done. Each building has to be assessed in engineering perspective. The representatives of Lithuania and Ukraine agree on the fact that engineering and research and expert work has to be performed. The state of the buildings have to be evaluated, as well as bridges and other buildings. First and foremost, we have to know what is exact situation in each building, each infrastructure place. This will allow to know the scope of the work needed. Therefore, now we need to focus on research of infrastructure and the buildings that remains. And then all the other engineering communications may be installed, such as heating, electricity, water supply. Another area that is very important, and the ministry provides the funding for this, is training Ukrainians in modulating their work. Because it will be hard to do anything without digitalization. The life cycle of the buildings has to be assessed. And now we may help Ukraine to prepare the specialists of building modulation. We have already talked with representatives from the university, and I think that this software, modeling software, may be provided, and the people may receive certificates enabling them to work not only in Ukraine but in the EU market as well. And our association and our government could contribute to that. Another aspect that has to be implemented in Ukraine is electronic log of construction works. In Lithuania, we have a piece of legislation stating that all buildings that are being funded from the EU funds have to have the construction logbook. And I think that this is a very important and good tool that ensures transparency. And without this instrument, Ukraine will not be able to ensure transparency. And this construction logbook has to be there as soon as possible. Engineers have to be trained to use it. And we suggest the discussion on where the information has to be stored, how the piece of legislation should look like. And we think that this piece of legislation has to be developed in Ukraine as soon as possible. Lithuanian authorities, such as Ministry of Environment, has contributed a lot to assisting Ukraine in making its legislation. Another instrument that is very important is digital tools, and this is digital building passport. A new norm is included in our legal regulation that when the owner of the building changes, all the information related to the building has to be given to the new owner of the building, and it has to be done in digital format. And then the energy efficiency, transparency, and other aspects could be ensured. We have started talking with representatives from Ukraine, and we are working on this. Beyond doubt, any EU fund prepared to invest in reconstruction of Ukrainian infrastructure wants to be sure that the funds will be used for the right purpose. And now it is very important for Lithuania and for all post-Soviet countries to curb the illegal work. I think that Ukraine's confidence depends on paying taxes. And legal work should become standard, should become a norm. Lithuania has the instrument for that, and this is the builder's ID card, which can be implemented in Ukraine, because with the use of this card, the situation may change radically, because at the moment the majority of builders are not paying taxes and working illegally. Therefore, these decisions have to be taken as rapidly as possible. No person should work on the construction site without the builder's ID card. If we achieve this, all the buildings will be constructed legally, all the taxes will be paid, and then we will have a real picture in terms of the cost of the building. The code of the builder's ID card is also indicated in the construction logbook. This method can be implemented. The construction sector is prepared for that, and now the EU member states have this builder's ID. This ID card is being administered by the state, and the public authorities store the data. The competences of the builders are being checked. And I think that the Construction Federation has to cooperate with the government of Ukraine and the Labor Inspectorate in order to implement this tool, which will radically change the picture in the construction sector. Public procurement is yet another instrument needed in Ukraine. In public procurement of construction works, Lithuania is cooperating with Ukraine, and each purchasing organization should ensure transparency. Therefore, we have a standardized document that ensures the responsibility of the construction company. And the purchasing organization carries responsibility for timely payment. We have the document of about 70 pages length, and the Lithuanian government is prepared to share this document with the colleagues from Ukraine. And I think it is very good for each purchasing organization to have one standard document for all contractors. When everybody knows it, there's more clarity of who has failed to do something according to this document. we also have a catalog of qualification criteria, and the purchasing organization should not create its own criteria in order to ensure transparency. Therefore, we think that we will have about 20 criteria that will help to select the best contractor. The economic usefulness is very important. And the purchasing organization may choose certain criteria from the catalog and use them to evaluate the proposals. The ideal is to have a fully automated system. We are working on this in Lithuania. We still need some communication and some convincing work to do. I hope we will succeed in that. However, I do suggest this concept for Ukraine, because your trust in public procurement has to be unwavering. We, Lithuania, we are prepared to provide you the assistance regarding the things I have mentioned. Of course, we have to talk about the most essential element. Once I was an attendee in the conference dedicated to the reconstruction of Ukraine, and there was a commissioner, EU commissioner present, the Ministry of Lithuanian Innovations was present, and I said that insurance matters have to be addressed on the European level, because if we want to commission Lithuanian workers to Ukraine, we have to have the instruments for health and safety insurance, for equipment insurance, and goods insurance. At the moment, we do not have that. No insurance company does that. However, I managed to raise this matter in the Construction Federation, and the European Construction Federation has the committee established, and our representative was present in the meeting. We have formulated the proposals for the European Commission, and this matter was included into the agenda. In Lithuania, the consultations are ongoing. We are working with the insurance companies and trying to find the solution. We think that the government has to have the reinsurance instrument. For example, if a company provides insurance services, then 90% of the reimbursement has to be provided by the foundation that could be established on the European Union level or in each member state. And if this instrument enters into force, we could send our construction company and construction company workers to Ukraine, because at the moment there's a huge risk. For example, if a person works in war zone, then there's force majeure situation, and which means that insurance is not valid. And the construction companies do not allow the equipment to be transported to Ukraine. We understand that winter is approaching. We need concrete decisions. Families are looking for ways to find shelter during winter. We do have EU regulations which cannot be changed easily. We have in mind the requirements for transparency in order to use the EU funds. We cannot change that easily as well. The Lithuanian Builders Lithuanian Construction Association is prepared for the discussion on the implementation of digitalized instrument in Ukraine. An agency has a department that is also involved in this. The government is also working on this matter. Each month I am invited to speak about what has been done regarding the construction in Ukraine. I hope that all the needed steps will be taken. And I hope that we will help Ukraine to ensure the future for its industry. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, Alexei?
For the word, I have a several remarks. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Aidas and Dalius. By now, the key issue for Ukraine is for sure victory. Victory in terms of the front line, and these days we observe some success in Kharkiv region. So that is why I'm talking about this, because I want everyone to understand that before the renovation, active renovation, we must reach peace, and we must obtain the full victory over the Russian occupiers. Another point in terms of renovation, because that is important, and we appreciate the support of Lithuania to Ukrainian cities. I am representative from central Ukraine. My constituency is in Kremenchuk city. It's in Poltava region, and it is cooperated. The city is cooperated with Alytus, and it has received a lot of support from the beginning of the war, a lot of humanitarian aid, and other, and also they do provide some equipment, as I know, for innovation, some fire machines, you know, so firefighting machines. Sorry. As for the issues that you told about and renovation in terms of public procurement, I think that is very important now, and we have to create vehicles to use and to spend the resources that can be given to Ukraine. We do understand all the threats and risks about the inappropriate procurement procedures, or the procedures that do not comply with the standards of European Union. We do have good practice such as Prozoro system. It is open and transparent, but we do still have a lot of corruption. Especially the biggest corruption, unfortunately, is in the construction procurement. So that is where we should cooperate and we should work together, and that we can change, because the request is huge now, and we can beat any political obstacles just to start spending and renovating in Ukraine. The cities, including Bucha, Borodyanka, and those that are now liberated for the last several days. So we do need your experience, your help, and consultations on best practice and EU rules, how to work with public procurement. We with Roxolana work public procurement issues in committee, so we can do something good. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexei, for question. And really, Dalius or Aidas, comment?
My small remark, we are ready to help you and consult you. We are ready.
Okay, Aidas.
Aš gal trumpai, ta prasme, tai, ką jūs...
I will be brief. Well, everything depends on planning and project implementation and all these elements, not only in Ukraine, but also in the European countries to exist. I have in mind corruption. And the best way is to separate the processes. And from the technical side and the support side, we are ready to help you, but you have to do your own homework, and this is the issue of political will. Because if you don't have political will, you will not be able to manage all those processes. Alexander. Well, everything what has been said previously, this is my sector. I have a proposal. Well, the contracts and the ID card, all those things constitute a huge work that we have to do. We have a proposal that we will agree on time, but we are inviting you to Ukraine. We are organizing a meeting in our country. Responsible ministries organizing this, and the Committee on Construction and also Construction Confederation will make a separate meeting. And the issues that you raised, they have a great space of maneuver, and thank you for addressing this today. You could really help us in terms of the legislative basis, and we will start arranging the meeting, and we will agree on the concrete date and inform you. We are ready, and our associations and agencies are ready to assist and support you. Sorry, we don't have much time now. Therefore, I would like to give the floor to Lithuania's industry challenges and solutions.
Thank
you, Mr. Chairman. I will try to be brief. Ladies and gentlemen, participants of the roundtable discussion, members of the Seimas, guests, partners, colleagues. We are living in a very interesting period. Lithuania experienced several crises simultaneously. So what are the possible solutions that can be seen by the Lithuanian industry? The first challenge is the disbalance between the supply chains, which are being reshaped. The main factors of this are the persisting effects of COVID, China's policy in response to the opening of Taiwan's mission in Lithuania, and a decrease in supply from war-affected countries. We used to buy many raw materials. Bless you. We had many. We had purchased raw materials from Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia. The end of supply fluctuations is still difficult to expect, as demonstrated by the Industrial Expectations Index being developed on the 18th of August. Until this year, Russia was one of the EU's main trading partners. For example, in last year, the trade in goods between the EU and Russia totaled 257.5 billion euro. Imports into the EU amounted to 158.5 billion, dominated by fuels and mining products, in particular mineral fuels, nearly 99 billion euro, wood, over 3 billion euro, iron and steel, 7.5 billion euro, and fertilizers, 1.78 billion euro. Well, on the right-hand side, you can see the import of metals. You can see the fluctuation of prices. So delays in the delivery of raw materials and components leads to the delays in the fulfillment of contractual obligations. It is also more difficult for manufacturers to respond to fluctuations in demand. Therefore, it means that industrialists are very careful in selecting their partners and decrease their dependence on Eastern markets. This requires resources and time, but we are ready to go on this way. When the situation changes, there is a great demand for working capital. We need to pay in advance, and therefore we are facing a very serious problem of working capital. In some companies are not able to manage on their own, therefore they're expecting the support of the state. Now the next slide. The next challenge is energy. Due to the crisis resulting from the war in Ukraine, electricity prices increased fivefold, and there's still a risk of an increased. Industry, especially energy intensive, is not in a position to raise the price of the end product to the extent of the cost of energy. Some companies generate losses, they are forced to reduce production, partially stop activities, reduce working hours, lay off employees, cut planned expenditures. So the threats are quite large for the Lithuanian economy, because electricity prices are unstable and unpredictable, making it difficult for companies to self-assess energy costs and make appropriate decisions. For example, to conclude contracts with buyers of production. In the context of this energy crisis, the biggest challenge to Lithuania's energy security is the lack of electricity generation. Over the last 10 years, local electricity generation capacity has not been developed in Lithuania. We wasted the best time when we decided not to construct the nuclear power plants, but we did not exploit the renewable energy resources. If we had gained momentum, then we would have already made a significant progress and would have now have a larger volume of our own generation. It means that we wasted 4 years. Only in 2016-2017, when renewable solutions and energy began to develop, the situation began to change, and we see that we are in a better situation than many European countries. But of course, still we have high electricity prices. In terms of gas and oil, we are doing quite good, but electricity prices is a very sensitive issue. The solution is the generation of energy capacities in Lithuania, and this is also the goal of Lithuania's energy independence. The Lithuanian government aims to have as many prosumers as possible in Lithuania. To this end, bureaucratic, technical, and other barriers to the development of renewable energy should be addressed. The legal framework should be improved and investment support should be made accessible. State aid guaranteed to companies as long-term sustainable investment, co-financing of the conversion of fossil fuels, especially gas, into renewable energy sources and energy efficiency. Short-term solutions include state aid measures for companies facing the consequences of the energy crisis, preferential loans, for example, for working funds, investments, guarantees for negotiable and investment loans, and leasing transactions. Now the next slide. The third challenge is the green transformation. According to the Industrial Expectation Index, 86% of Lithuanian companies expressed their willingness to innovate into production. And only 14% of companies do not see the need for technological innovations. The transition to greener habits such as electric cars, recycling is gradually successfully implemented, with 101 projects that are currently underway in Lithuania for the construction of new charging stations. Lithuania made the biggest leap between 2004 and 2019 in waste recycling compared to other EU countries. In 2019, Lithuania lagged behind Denmark, but then we are recycled more than Luxembourg. Now we need to move to renewables and move to prosumer model. The transition to solar energy is the fastest solution for companies to capture production costs for 20 to 30 years. However, the problem is an energy-intensive industry for which the transition to solar energy is not the right solution. I have in mind the producers of fertilizers. Another problem is the CO2 emissions and greening of processes. European targets for reducing CO2 emissions by 55% for gas and energy-intensive sectors is objectively impossible. Technological processes make it impossible to emit CO2 into the environment even under the maximum saving mode. Greening such processes is possible, but it requires investments that the business alone is unable to make, and priorities to have been redistributed in the wake of the energy crisis in the country. The current situation of extremely high energy prices and the development of wind and solar energy is creating additional turmoil for an uncertain period of time. The challenges require a very good analysis and planning of the company's choice of technologies and operational strategies, adapting to changing market needs, less pollution production, etc. Given all this, the essential thing that industry needs to adapt is the stability of electricity prices in the market. The more stable the price of electricity is, and the more predictable it is, the safer and more precise the industry can choose the technology to implement its decarbonization. The equipment of the newly selected technologies will have to operate from 30 to 30 years or more, so the stability and predictability is crucial before such long-term investment steps are taken. Our Association agrees that the green transformation process presupposes a number of challenges, but it must remain the long-term goal of Lithuanian industry, as decarbonization is also a guarantee of Lithuania's stability. Responsibility for the green transition must be shared between the business and the state. The fourth challenge that we would like to mention is the lack of a labor force. We are facing that. Lithuanian demographic and social statistics no longer allow companies to fill jobs. There are not enough people of working age able to work, and the long-term unemployed is a great problem. In Lithuania, we have 38,000 long-term unemployed people. The industry is already understaffed today, so business encourages responsible authorities in the country to make efforts to facilitate recruitment procedures for foreigners. The lack of staff across Europe also contributes to the complexity of the situation. Both low, medium, and high-skilled workers are on demand. The lack of labor force impedes investments, and companies find it difficult to plan business development. For example, in August this year, there were 30,000 job vacancies in Lithuania officially registered, but the real number of vacancies is significantly higher. The largest number of job vacancies are in manufacturing, wholesale, and retail companies. Most job offers are for skilled workers and machinery and equipment operators. So this is about the labor force and labor market. Another challenge that we're facing is the impact of Lithuania on global trends. Lithuania is among the most inflation-affected countries. Annual inflation in Lithuania remained the same and amounted to 21.1%. So this is twice as large than the average in the EU. We actually face the largest increase in prices. Lithuania is experiencing one of the highest price increases among the Eurozone countries. Lithuanian industry companies view trends in foreign economies in a mixed way. More than half of the companies' expectations are deteriorating due to the difficulties of foreign economies. It means that Lithuania is diversifying its economy, and it's demonstrating the strength of its economy. And we are feeling the pressures from the population to increase the salaries and the minimum wage. It is unwise to compensate inflation with increasing salaries, so we might get into the spiral of the inflation. Yes, we are speaking about the minimum wage. Employers would like to increase that. Tomorrow we are going to hold a tripartite council with the social partners on the increasing of the minimum salary. We are waiting for the data from the Lithuanian Bank on Lithuania's statistics for the second part of the year. You promised to be brief. Well, I'm approaching the end of my presentation. So what are the perspectives for the future? Economic forecasts are not very positive, with 1.5 to 2% of growth, thanks to the successful first half of 2022. However, the forecast for the next year is quite pessimistic. The positive message is that the financial health of companies and population is much better this year compared to 2008. This means that we will be able to overcome and withstand the recession. And now briefly about the support to Ukraine. We're very glad that Lithuania is in top 5 countries in terms of support to Ukraine. And this is only the official support or governmental support. We also, as a confederation supporting Ukraine, we opened an account and we invited our members to pay into this account. We also purchased food and other things and brought to Ukraine. Members of our confederation, both personally and through the confederation, gave over 3 million euros in support to Ukraine. We wish the fastest victory of Ukraine. We believe in this, and we will believe in your victory in the future. Slava Ukrainian.
Thank you very much to the Director General of the Lithuanian Confederation of Industrialists. Now we are going to move on to another important matter, that is potential of Ukraine's investment in military industry enterprises in Lithuania. And the keynote speaker is Mr. Robert Jotka, board member of the Lithuanian Defense and Security Industry Association.
Of the highest Rada, dear members of the Parliament, I will speak in English in order to make it easier for everyone to communicate and understand. Obviously, there were a lot of presentations about challenges and problems, so my presentation will focus more on opportunities and possibilities. And before starting, I would like to heartfully thank all the Ukrainian people and the military and armed forces who are actually fighting every day for us and not only for yourselves. So thank you very much. As said, my presentation will focus on the possibilities Lithuanian defense and security industry provides for Ukrainian kind of partners and for cooperation. And the second part of my presentation will cover the investment environment of Lithuania and the region as such. And actually, I would want to start from the investment environment, in fact, rather than from all the other formal parts. So, according to the survey done by the World Bank, Lithuania is on the 11th place in the world for ease of doing business. This is for the year 2022, this year. Ukraine, in comparison, is 64th. Our neighbor Poland is 40th. Latvia is on the 19th, and Estonia is on the 18th position. So, as you can see, on the comparative environment, Lithuania is really a good place to do business internationally. So, but coming back to my essential part of the presentation is, as you know, I represent the Lithuanian Defense and Security Industry Association. We are an association that joins industries and companies working in this sector, and we actually create and develop high value added products both for military purpose, mil-spec, dual use and high energy tech solutions. Well, actually the areas where our members are specializing are quite wide, as you can see. It's both ammunitions, armaments, electronics, IT, logistic, energy, laser technologies and solutions, communication, infrastructure development, training and coaching, ambulance, medicine, etc., and so forth. So we cover a very wide range of services as our members of the association. Some practical examples that we have, and we're talking about our members, is actually we have members in air and space area, satellite communications, in air and unmanned aerial vehicles, production area, both long range, higher altitude drones and small, lower altitude tactical drones, also various solutions for visual identification, etc. We also have members providing air-ground support, so-called MRO, maintenance, repair and overhaul for especially older Soviet types of helicopters and equipments, also potentially fighters like MiG-type fighters or Me-type helicopters. So all these can be repaired in Lithuania if need be. So that might be a big kind of cooperation possibility for our countries. Not to mention, of course, drones and others. Then other area is, of course, ammunition. Giraitės ginkluotės gamykla, the main ammunition factory in the whole region, producing NATO standard ammunition and also ammunition for the older 7.62-39 calibers and 5.45 calibers. Also, we have members in communication and information system technologies like ELSIS, like NRD, CS, Primecom, others. They are all providing various solutions in cybersecurity, in communication, tactical communication, radio stations, coded communications, etc. We have a very developed component industry in Lithuania. For example, one of our members, Kitron, is a Norwegian company. They are producing motherboards for F-35 fighters, just for your information, essentially. So we have really high-tech solutions, and their factory in Kaunas is really something that everybody should see. We also have other members like Altechna, Exma, Expla Group, who are providing and developing various laser-based solutions in the nano lasers, and actually Expla Group is actually #1 in the world in its specific niche field of nano lasers for scientific applications, for research and development applications that also can be used for military purposes for certain areas. Additionally, we have very wide businesses in the so-called optotronics area, also based on laser technologies like Broly Semiconductors, producing various sights, thermal sights, FLIRs, and other solutions. For example, the FLIRs produced by Broly Semiconductors are actually unique in the world in the sense that they can see through glass. Normal thermovision devices cannot see through glass. Theirs can. So this is one of the solutions. Also, NT service, a very known anti-drone, counter-drone system that is working in Ukraine since 2015 or 16. So for many years it has been very efficient on the battlefield, and I have personally witnessed its efficiency in the battlefield before 2022 and 2019 when I was on the front line there. So actually it really works. Atri, also a Ukrainian owner company working in Lithuania, producing thermal images for armored personnel carriers, for cars to drive in total darkness without any light sources, and many other solutions. We also have ground support, like Arveka, our good member, provides host nation real lifetime support for NATO troops and provides like camp equipment and other needed equipment for troops to survive on the field and to be comfortable and function. Also ground support and ground vehicle services. Autokurtas provides repair services. Ostara develops various hybrid buggies and solutions. Also, we have personal equipment like clothing, like vests, like pouches, ballistic helmets, etc. All range of that. Also, research and development like BPTI, an institution actually, it's not even a company, it's an institute, functioning in the R&D sector, in the defense and security R&D related solutions, including artificial intelligence, augmented intelligence, virtual reality, etc. So, as you can see, actually, we have a whole spectrum of members who are providing all possible solutions to the military and armed forces and the police and border protection, customs, etc. So, the kind of services and the products produced are really across the board. Well, thus, our technological development and technological capacity in Lithuania provided by the members of our association and other industry participants go hand in hand with the newest technical developments worldwide. So now let's come on over to the small intro about the overall business environment and how to invest into Lithuania to actually function here. So legally speaking, and I'm myself a lawyer by trade, I'm an attorney at law, business attorney at law. So actually there are several company types in Lithuania, but of course the most important one and the most popular one is the so-called UAB or closed stock company. Its establishment is rather easy and quick. The minimum share capital is only 2,500 euros. There are now proposals in the parliament actually to reduce that share capital minimum to 1,000 euro. And this is actually quite easy. The process itself, apart from collection of documents, is very quick. It takes up to 3 days to register the company. Then actually you need some works to receive specific licenses if you are engaged in, let's say, defense sector or fintech or other sectors that are regulated, energy sector, for example. But generally speaking, the Lithuanian regulatory bodies have really improved in recent years, and the quickness of reaction is really sometimes even remarkable. So I'm telling that from my personal experience. Of course, there are issues as everywhere, but generally speaking, the improvement is really huge. So the company foundation process I will not dwell upon too much. It's rather easy. The main bodies of the company is the managing director, as in Ukraine. It's the only person by law entitled to sign on behalf of the company. And the other bodies are like the board and supervisory board. They are not obligatory according to law to function or to functioning of the company. They can be formed, but they don't have to be formed. The whole presentation will be given to you, so I won't dwell upon the details here. Employment possibilities. Lithuania has a brand new labor code that is very flexible, comparatively very flexible, and actually provides various types of labor contracts, not only the classical, fixed time labor contract or 8 to 5 work contract, but also we have different agreement types for project work, for seasonal work, for temporary work, even for sharing of workplaces and for sharing of employer, essentially. So these are quite modern and really functioning quite well. The minimum salary in Lithuania at the moment is 730 euros per month, gross, meaning before taxes. And the hourly minimum rate is 4.47 euros per hour, which is actually not very cheap. So Lithuania is really not a cheap country for labor anymore. It's rather a technically developed and high-tech country. I will not talk about the termination of employment, taxation of employment. Long story short, the overall tax burden for the employer is 32%, 32%. That's a kind of average sum of all the other taxes comprising taxation of employment. The good thing for the employers is that the employee is kind of in the agreement of the employment, all taxes are included into the monthly salary. So essentially, the employee sees how much taxes he's paying. So essentially, previously we had a system that the employer's part of taxation was kind of hidden from the employee, and he did not really see what kind of taxation is really effective. So that has been changed several years ago, and now the employee is fully aware of how many taxes are being paid from his salary. So it's actually easier to communicate and discuss with employees about payment. The most important part, actually, corporate taxation. Lithuanian standard corporate income tax, or profit tax sometimes as it's called in Lithuanian. The rate of it is 15%. It's actually the lowest rate in the Baltics. If you compare to the same Estonia or Latvia, they have higher rates. They have a bit different system. They don't tax reinvested profits, but essentially the rates are higher. So for Estonia, for example, it's 24%, and for Latvia, I guess it's the same, if I'm not mistaken. Also, we have a reduced rate of 5% that applies to small companies. The turnover of does not exceed 300,000 euros per year, and that do not employ more than 10 employees. There are also specific tax incentives for companies being established in the free economic zones. Lithuania has 7 free economic zones. 2 of them are very, very successful, the one in Kaunas and the one in Klaipėda. And there, if you invest 1 million euro or more, you get 0% of corporate income tax for 10 years, 0%. For another 6 years, you get 50% discount, meaning you pay only 7.5%. So essentially, 10 years, 0%, free of charge essentially. Another 6 years, 7.5% taxation. That's a very, very, very favorable rate. The only issue with free economic zones is that still, from the old days of peacetime, there are limitations for pure military, defense producers to establish there and to kind of work on these favorable conditions. I'm sure that the Parliament will take measures to eliminate that restriction from the possibilities to be active in the free economic zones. But really, free economic zones are the most important benefit of Lithuania for the purposes of production and functioning here. Also, another very important benefit is that companies that are engaged in research and development, they can deduct the costs for research and development 3 times. So it's a triple deduction. Essentially, if you spend 100 euros on research and development, you can deduct 300 euros from your profit. That's another incentive for R&D. And also, there are other incentives like no limitations for loss carry forward, possibilities to intra-group carry forward of the losses, etc. Also, if you are a so-called big investor, meaning that you invest over 30 million euros and employ at least 150 persons, you may be exempt from corporate income tax for a period of 20 years. That's a special new regulation. There are some other conditions to that, but that is also a possibility. VAT rate is, value-added tax rate is 21%. There are reduced rates of 9% and 5%, but generally the VAT rate is 21%. I will not dwell on that too much. As said, overall rating in the world, 11th place in the world by ease of doing business. So really possible to cooperate. And also, by finishing, I would like to quote a Roman senator from the Roman Republican Times, Co2 the censor, who finished all his speeches by the word ceterum censum, Carthago delenda est, meaning, among other things, Carthago has to be destroyed. Now I changed this saying into a modern saying, meaning Moskva delenda est, meaning Moscow has to be destroyed. So with that saying, I would like to finish my today's presentation. Razum do perimogi, together to victory. Moscow has to be destroyed. Moskva delenda est.
Ačiū Robertai, iš tikrųjų už tokį.
Thank you, Robert, for this brief, emotional presentation. We've also made some notes on what needs to be amended in the legislation. I believe that we had a great influence of Moscow in the past, and therefore legislation was affected by that too. But we want to speak about transport. We have a Vice Minister of Transport. She will speak on the problems that we are facing. Unfortunately, we have only 100 of a European track, a railway track. We are constructing this railway up till Tallinn, but we have to efficiently use what we have. So Loreta Maskoloviana, Vice Minister of Communications and Transport, would you point out some of the challenges we have? Thank you. I think that we have to speak on 2 aspects, the short-term support and the long-term support perspectives. While Lithuania was one of the first countries to provide short-term support and rapid support, today we're facing a different tendency, the tendency of returning home, assistance to return home, and this dynamics is changing and fluctuating. Now, the transportation in Ukraine, we are helping with Our infrastructure, including transportation of agricultural products from Ukraine, and we are transporting fuel to Ukraine together with Orlen. This exercise helped us to see all the shortcomings that we have. While the procedures, border procedures, are not very effective, with 3 to 5 days of train stopping at the border. And this is a traffic jam, we might call it this way, because we have different trains coming to Lithuania, some trains are going to Poland. So this greatest traffic jam is costly, and we're facing another part of the problem is the time spent at the border is an idle time, and we still have to pay for renting the train cars, and the prices are becoming very high. And this is related to mostly bureaucratic and red tape issues. Finally, it increases the prices, and the businesses refuse to rent the train cards. This is a very strong issue. We also don't have the regular flows, and we are waiting for the cargo on the Ukrainian side, and we understand this challenge on the Ukrainian side to load the agricultural products. These are the short-term issues that we are trying to address together with the Polish and Ukrainian sides. Our minister is very often contacting his colleagues in Ukraine and in Poland in order to reduce the idle time at the border. In the long-term perspective, we have agreed, you know, the European Union is reviewing the TNT map with new perspectives for Ukraine. We have a new remapping project, the Rail Baltica is also interested in having the exit to the Ukrainian map, and hopefully the ministers will sign the memorandum on the new corridor on the Rail Baltica with 2 border posts. And this gives a different regulation and rhetoric in the European Union. It actually entails different possibilities and different funding. Well, certainly the Polish side has to agree with that, because we will be having a new corridor on the Polish territory. And this is one of the main topics in the Council of Transport on Ukraine's integration into the TNT network. We are cooperating greatly with Poland, and it is a question of time and focusing of resources. Another issue is a cooperation between Lithuanian railways and Ukrainian railways, and we are again speaking about the need for investments into Lithuanians' infrastructure in order to increase the capacities of transportation. We have 2 stations in Lithuania that are changing their track into the European track. So this is the gauge changing mechanisms. If we increase the capacities here, we could increase the flows into the Klaipėda port. Together with Latvia and Estonia this year, we are setting the Amber train, And Estonia is interested in taking some of the flows into the Muuga port. We are working on the railway side now in order to increase the capacities and the flow capacities. Ukrainians know that we've made a possibility to carry the cargoes by large vehicles without any necessary permits. This was the agreement among all EU member states. It is a temporary decision because Ukraine will have to become full-fledged carriers in the European Union market. So this will require some homework from the Ukrainian side. Our ministry has given certain insights of what can be done in order to speed up this process. We are also ready to provide any competencies and any know-how and expertise to this end. The speaker has not turned on the microphone. The speaker has not turned on the microphone.
No translation.
Dabar ačiū tikrai.
Thank you for your information. Well, we could discuss on this block. We have a colleague from Ukraine wishing to comment, and Thomas from an American company. So everybody who is willing can join this discussion. Igor, the floor is yours. Thank you. I would like to thank Lithuania once again for providing this large military support to Ukraine so that we can fight our common enemy. I would like to make a remark. Mr. Robert said, well, if you don't mind, after our joint victory, we will be facing a permanent threat and cooperation need. So we will face a priority for cooperation and realization of all those possibilities of cooperation. Well, when listening to your presentation, I realized that you're really working hard in order to improve the business sector in Lithuania, and this is a great example for us Ukrainians on the way to go. Well, certainly we have not been sitting idle before the war. My colleagues and me from the Committee on Economics have made some work. We have the law on investment, and we think that it is not a highly quality instrument for attracting investments. But we also had and adopted a law on industrial parks, and your experience in free economic zones is very interesting to us, because the possibility to free business for 20 years from the corporate tax is great. This is a very interesting experience. and we are ready to learn from this experience. I believe that we can exchange the contact data and continue on cooperation, on military cooperation. We have great missiles. They've proven their efficiency. You have thermal drones and unmanned aircrafts. I believe that we will have food for thought here. Certainly we face certain logistic challenges, and we see the overload of logistics on the border. But in this area, we are also making a little step forward despite some difficulties. We have adopted the amendments to all the necessary pieces of legislation so that the visa-free regime at the borders begins to work, and this will speed up the procedures on the border. We want to work together and to cooperate to develop the infrastructure of the terminal so that we can exchange the goods on the border as soon as possible. In terms of our general turnover of goods, it's about $2 billion, or it amounts to $2 billion. And I want to say that we need to work hard to increase the turnover even more. In terms of the economic area, well, you will have the support of our committee, and we're also expecting the maximum possible cooperation and contacts with you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Would you like to respond to the remarks?
Obviously, we have to cooperate. You know, we are natural allies for hundreds of years already, and definitely we will have to do that. And yeah, well, obviously, thermovisors, sights, scopes, drone technologies. Definitely, we will have to talk about that in more detail after our or during our lunchtime and dinner time. And definitely, I'm sure that we are already cooperating. I mean, a lot. Our members are providing support to Ukraine daily. I mean, as we speak today, I guess there are our members who are providing support. So definitely that should be. But also, we should increase, cooperation in the sense that Lithuanian, industry really gives the possibility to kind of repair, to develop, to produce, things that are needed on the front line in a safe, secure environment at the moment. So that is the biggest kind of help we can give you as well. In our not only monetary or production ways, but I mean to provide the safe territory and safe environment for your people to work and produce. So that's definitely.
Yeah. Thank you.
Ačiū iš tikrųjų.
Thank you, Alexei.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentations and for your speeches. So I wanted to make a couple comments on two issues that you were talking about. The first is about energy. There was someone reminded about the oil refinery in the Orlen oil refinery. So we do appreciate the support that has been given by the oil refineries, not only in Lithuania, but many European plants have started to produce more for Ukrainian market after Ukrainian oil refineries have been destroyed. One of them is in my hometown, in my constituency. So I do know the problem of oil market very well, and Ukraine has suffered the deficit of petrol in spring. So now it is better, thanks to the people who work also in the plant of Orlen in Lithuania. But that is as a conclusion about the energy and oil market, we should say that Putin uses energy as a weapon, and also in terms of electricity, we have spoken about this a lot today, in terms of oil markets and dependence of European countries on their sources, energy sources, I mean Russian energy sources. And Lithuania is a good example how to prepare, how to build a big strategy to reject the dependence. And that is what is Ukraine learning how to be independent. And by the way, we have obtained the energetic visa-free regime, it is called in Ukraine, when the electricity grid is integrated into the European system instead of Russian and Belarus. So and this happened like 1 month ago. And another weapon that is also used by Russians is a logistic infrastructural weapon. That is how they blocked Ukrainian ports, seaports, and as we were not prepared to such kind of threat. Now we are facing the traffic jams on the borders with many countries, with Poland, with Hungary and Romania and other. And we are building now the capacity for transportation, for selling, for exporting Ukraine's grain, and for importing energy resources. So the point is we should cooperate more. There is a lot of stuff to do to be more independent in terms of energy and infrastructure, because the threat and the enemy is the same for everyone. That is why we should be close to each other and support each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexei. Ačiū, dėkui, Alexei. Ir dar, kaip aš jau pristačiau.
Well, a brief remark by Thomas, a representative from the US company, which also, well, we have the lack of fuels, but we have big ports, and therefore we can ensure the import of resources. Therefore, a railway is very important here.
I represent a company, Husar & Company. We focus today exclusively on energy independence, and I appreciate being here. Thank you, Deputy Chairwoman. Thank you, Deputy Speaker, Ambassador, members of the committee. It's really an honor to be here. I feel like it's 57 years coming. I'm a son of two refugees that escaped communist Hungary in 1956. I was born in the US and started investing in Central Eastern Europe in 1989 when the wall came down. We found our way to Lithuania sort of in a round and about journey where I received calls from my colleagues in Kiev soon after the aggression started, the recent aggression. We were relatively dormant in the market after the Russians came into Crimea, just feeling that it was too great a challenge for international investors to continue to focus on a market that we really couldn't control politically, so that caused us to spend less time focused on the market, unfortunately. I started getting calls. The initial requests were very simple. Can you help my wife? Can you help my children? Can you send gear? And then other later requests came to, can you help us source energy products, fuel products on the international markets? And those calls started coming in early March of this year. My first reaction was to go south. We started in Moldova. We secured storage facilities in Moldova to bring fuel in through the Danube port, and soon to find out that that facility that we had in Moldova was given away to others after we signed contracts. So soon thereafter we went to Constanța down in Romania and realized that that also was a crowded out market and place that was not welcoming to some of the international support and investment that we were hoping to make. We soon thereafter found a home in Lithuania, where we're currently working to bring fuel into Ukraine. We do it on a daily basis. We're doing it today with trucks, transportation capitalizing on the Baltic ports and coming down with trucks for customers that range from petrol stations, large agricultural concerns, and some of the larger Ukrainian fuel traders. With some friends that we've made and some very good friends here in the market, we are being introduced to greater infrastructure, the railway company. We need platforms. We need availability of good competitive pricing, and we also need a time frame that's realistic to try to reach the market with our product. So with that long introduction, I want to thank everybody for all the efforts. I hope very much that Ukraine will continue to win the battle. It's not only important for this region that I know is very sensitive to the aggression, but it's important to both the greater good of Europe and the greater good of democracy. It all starts with independence and the fight for independence and freedom, and soon thereafter we have the topic, an important topic of energy. So, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for the opportunity to participate. We're here to start a small program that we think will have very, very lasting and big results with some of the larger U.S. deeper pockets of equity and private equity that I work with and closely with. So we need your help. We're on stage to show our results here, and we trust we're in the right place with the right people to show greater impact and how we can help Ukraine now and rebuilding in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tom. Indeed, when we see the assistance being provided and the work being carried out, we realize how much the US is helping Ukraine. Thank you very much. Lithuania will also do everything together with the Ukrainians to ensure that the cargo reaches Ukraine. And we hope that there will be fewer and fewer obstacles. Now, I am still aware of the fact that there are construction issues. Unfortunately, we do not have time So I hope we'll continue the discussion after the meeting. And now I would like to give the floor to my colleague Roxolana to summarize the event of today.
Very succinct, and I would like to say that this meeting was important for both sides, I believe, to receive a very important outlook of what's going on both in Ukraine and Lithuania and figure out the possible areas of cooperation. I'm glad that we have already sketched the areas and some ideas for future projects. I would like to reiterate my offer to put you in contact with the Ministry of Economic Development of Ukraine to discuss specific investment targets, because as it often happens with politicians, our discussions are may seem a bit generic, but we could speak very much details with every investor that is potentially interested in Ukraine, and we would be very glad to do so. With that being said, I thank you, Kazis, for invitation and organization of this roundtable, and everyone for participating. Thank you.
Dėkui, Roxolana, už šiltus žodžius.
Thank you, Roxolana, for your kind words. I would like to express my gratitude to the entire team of colleagues from Ukraine. We have managed to discuss very important questions such as energy, reconstruction, construction. We already have the first 10 billion euros, and we have an agency that will be responsible for that. Our Ministry of Energy is cooperating with the counterparts in Ukraine. And I hope that this meeting will contribute to making these contacts even more effective. We also see that representatives of our industry still have obstacles. However, they remain optimistic. The industry representatives have introduced all the opportunities. The military industry is the newest type of industry in Lithuania, and I think that this area has achieved a real miracle. Well, Russians aren't blind. And I have realized that Russians are dreaming about the products that we are already producing. So I do hope that we will achieve the victory. We have also talked about transport. In the beginning, we faced problems. Ukrainian cars were not allowed to go to the European Union. However, these matters were addressed very rapidly when helping each other, and sometimes colleagues from Ukraine would call Lithuania, and the next day the problems used to be resolved. I'm happy to say that our biggest investor is working today, and I have in mind the Transnova company. And this company is still working in Ukraine, while majority of companies have frozen their activities there. I would like to express my gratitude to the industry attaché, and it will be interesting to work with Tom And my thank you goes to the representatives of the Bureau and the committee. We have talked about theoretical matters, and we are looking forward to practical work. And now we're going to have lunch, and then we'll meet the Ministry of Economy, and we will continue the discussions during the lunch and dinner. Thank you very much once again.
O kokios dabar be suvenyrų pasikeitimo, tai Roxolana.
Well, an important part involves exchanging souvenirs.